what would you call a man who was a master blacksmith, a hunter, trailblazer, pathfinder and road builder, a surveyor, town builder, sawmill operator, and one of Brigham Young's special emissaries to the Native Americans in the mid-1800s? We'd call him Peter Schurz, a restless, amazing Utah pioneer. Peter helped settle town after town in Utah, beginning with Parowan and even helping to survey Las Vegas, Nevada. But one time, his wanderlust came close to costing him his life because of a cultural conflict. Here's Clive Romney, UPHA's founder, to tell the story.
Peter Schurz helped to find places for thousands of immigrants to Utah. Places such as West Jordan, Parowan, New Harmony, Glenwood, St. George, Cedar City, Irontown, and even Las Vegas. In each of those areas, he befriended the local Native Americans, whom he called the guardians of the land, and told them there would be settlers coming to live near them. Then he shared a meal with them. Over the course of 14 years, Peter helped the settlers build dozens of structures, dams, schools, churches, and houses. People began calling Peter the Daniel Boone of the desert. But Peter was restless. In the winter of 1864 to 65, in the middle of a drought, Peter Schurz moved his family to the Paria River Valley, 30 miles east of present-day Kanab. They were the only European immigrants. Paiutes lived along the banks of the Paria River in the hills north of him. Navajos lived on the flatlands to the south. As he visited his Native American neighbors, Peter was shocked by the lack of water in the Paria River. He was alarmed by the thin and malnourished adults and children. So he frequently shared food with them, and they ate together. Peter built his rock cabin over a small spring that ran into the Paria, so they had water for their immediate needs inside their stone cabin. But he knew it would be impossible to irrigate the crops they wanted to plant without a lot of water. He needed a new and better plan. So Peter and his family enlarged the natural depression beside their rock cabin and diverted all the water they didn't immediately need into that pool. Then they erected a shade canopy to minimize the evaporation from the pond. Using their 2 oxen, they plowed the hard ground so they could form dirt mounds, and they planted 1 seed in each mound. Then, using buckets and ladles, the Schurz family hand-watered each seed, continuing all summer to hand-water each plant as it grew. It was back-breaking work, but Peter was certain it was the only way they could grow their crops with the limited amount of water they had. Peter's plan worked. They dried much of the early maturing crops, but again they shared some with their indigenous neighbors. But just as their large, late maturing crops began to ripen, 2 of Peter's friends from Parowan galloped up to their cabin in a great hurry. "Peter," yelled one of them, "hitch your oxen to your wagon, grab what you absolutely need, and follow us back to Parowan. You're in grave danger out here surrounded by Indians." "Oh, no, you don't understand," replied Peter. "We're in no danger. We're friends with them. We've been keeping them alive with our food." "No, Peter, you don't understand," responded his friend. "Chief Blackhawk has declared war on all the settlers because we brought diseases into their village against which they have no immunity. Hundreds of them are dying, and we're fencing the grasslands they used to use to hunt and to move between their summer and winter campgrounds. Blackhawk has convinced all 5 nations, the Shoshone, the Goshutes, the Utes, the Paiutes, and the Navajo, to join him in this war. The loyalty of each band has to be to their chief, not to any friendships they may have with settlers like you." Peter bent his head and shook it dejectedly. "I just can't believe they would turn against us." He took in a deep breath, let it out with a sigh, and said, "I still don't believe we're in any danger. But, look, we can't just leave our crops in the ground. We've worked so hard to get them to this point. Give us 2 weeks to finish our harvest and load our wagon, and 3 weeks to get back to Parowan, okay?" His friend looked at Peter, then at the ground, then back at Peter. "Oh, Peter," he said, "I hope you're still alive after those 5 weeks." The two riders mounted up, and with a final, "God be with you, Peter," they rode back toward Parowan. Peter and his family began frantically harvesting from before sunup to long past sundown. On the third morning of harvesting, Peter awoke with a start. He cocked his head to one side and listened. Then with one arm, he jostled his wife until she awoke too. "Listen," he whispered. I don't hear anything," his wife responded. "That's the problem," Peter said as he threw off the covers. "The oxen should be awake and lowing." Peter ran out of the cabin and looked at the corral behind his house. Empty! Oh, Peter felt sure he knew what had happened. His starving Native American friends had quietly led the oxen away in the night, slaughtered them, and were, undoubtedly at this moment, curing the meat to eat and to store. At first, Peter felt sick with anger because now there was no way to pull their wagon back to Parowan, nor to plow the ground next spring. But he finally admitted to himself that retaliation would not solve the problem, nor would it help in finding a solution. So, the family continued harvesting with increased energy. In the evenings, although they ate from the day's labors, they continued by candlelight enlarging the root cellar underneath the cabin, where much of what they were harvesting would have to be stored. But now they began each night to pile furniture up against the door in case their neighbors became their enemies. They finished their harvesting just short of 2 weeks. They secured all their windows and reinforced the door, but each time they heard a knock, they peered between the door frame and the door, and it was always one of their Indian friends pleading for food, and they always shared. But one day, the knocking was louder and insistent. Through the door, Peter asked in Paiute, "What do you want?" The response, also in Paiute, was the equivalent of, "Chief, heap sick. Please, help." Peter felt that perhaps that was why he had studied medicine in Canada, and so he should go. So he gathered what few medical supplies he had and went with his Paiute friend to the chief's tent. There he found the chief lying face down in bed with boils all over his back. For 3 days he treated the chief until it seemed certain he would recover. Only then did the chief confess that, on orders from their tribal chieftain, they had intended to kill Peter and his family, but now they would not do that. Late that winter, however, they did take Peter's milk cow and slaughter it also to make beef jerky. Again, Peter was angry, but he decided not to retaliate. Early in the spring, when the snow in the mountain passes between Parowan and Paria had melted enough, a 7-man rescue party was sent out to bury Peter Schurz and his family. Since they had not shown up in 5 weeks as they promised, his friends feared they had all been killed. As the rescue party topped the rise looking down into the Paria River Valley, they saw Peter pushing his plow. But one man can't push a plow through hard ground. It's impossible. But at the end of the reins, where Peter's oxen should have been, were several of Peter's Native American friends pulling Peter's plow for him.
Could have been our last winter. Could have been time to say farewell. could have been time to pull the trigger and blow each other to hell. But when our food was gone and we had nowhere else to turn, we came to an understanding that we could fight or we could learn to pull together to plant the seeds that'll make it so we all can live. Move a little our point of view, let's take in a whole lot more of give. Share the burden, collaborate with the guardians of the land. Pull together and in the furrows we come to understand. Gotta say I was worried,
So worried.
have to say we prayed constantly. Want to say I knew we'd succeed, but that's not the way that it was with me. Looking in his eyes, I saw the fear that I felt too. And looking into my heart, I knew just what we had to do. To pull together, to plant the seeds that'll make it so we all can live. Move a little our point of view, let's take in a whole lot more of give. Share the burden, collaborate with the guardians of the land. Pull together and in the furrows we come to understand. Why do we pull apart whenever difficulty comes our way? Why don't we do what's smart and join our hands and hearts and minds and find a way to pull together to plant the seeds that make it so we